We are going to do a planter refresh today for the Meadow House. And one of the things that I really love about the Meadow House is it has this real cottagey feel to it. And we now have a back patio, we have a front patio. Saunders' parents are actually staying in the Meadow House right now, so they're really getting a chance to really enjoy it. But one of the things that we didn't finish before they got here is planting up some of the pots. We do have some of the pots planted up, but spring really came up fast and we had a lot of things to do in the landscape. And I was still getting plants in that I wanted to plant in the pots, and I have some really interesting ones that I'd like to share with you today. And we have to decide which ones are going where. May not get a chance to plant up all of the pots, but that's okay. We could always punt it to another time. But this one you might be staring at because it's quite large. And it has these really cool spires on top. It kind of reminds me of fuzzy liatris, which liatris is one of my favorite plants in the gardens. And after I saw this, I was like, ooh, I think I might need to get a liatris for one of these. Now, if you recall, I planted up these with some perennial plants, and I think there was 1 or 2 annuals in these. Last year in the fall with my mother, we went to one of my local greenhouses where I grew up in Pennsylvania as a kid. So my mom and I went down to go visit my grandmother, her mom, and my mom got to pick out some flowers. So she picked out delphinium, and I think we had a coreopsis, and I moved those into a bank planting, which we'll have to do another episode on planting the bank. But I moved those perennials out, which is fun. You can keep them in or you can move them out. But since they were kind of more fall blooming, I decided let's put them in the landscape and we'll kind of refresh them with some more spring and summer bloomers. So we have some things that are in bloom now, like this Galliardia. This is called a blanket flower. And we have some coreopsises that are just about to shoot off some flowers. And this is a geum. This is one that has a little bit more of a yellow bloom. You could find geums of all different shades and colors, really nice kind of soft pastel-y colors. And this is more of a spring bloomer. And then we also have some summer and fall bloomers in here as well. So we just recently got these planter pots. I determined that these would look really nice out in front of the western side of the Meadow House, facing the meadow. And these are like lava stone planters, so they're actually quite lightweight, but they have a really elegant shape to them. We had one of these already. And when I got these are called echiums. Sorry, I didn't like mention the name. It's like when somebody introduces, they say, oh, I know you, and they never introduce themselves. This is it used to be called actually Echium russicum, but now I think it's Pontecium maculatum, if I'm not mistaken. They can get a little wilty if they don't get water, so when we plant them in there, I'm gonna give this a really good drink. But this to me is a phenomenal plant, and it made me think, oh, I need a liatris in here because liatris have those nice spires too. This will get a nice fuzzy red bloom, kind of like a red fuchsia color. And we have some echiums growing in our memorial garden, and it's called Echium amomum, or otherwise known as red feathers, it's often called. So this I see as the central plant, and then we have to determine what else we want to plant around it. I mean, this would be fine on its own in the planter, but we have so many interesting plants here. We have the Santolina, we have this Oreganum krigami, which is one of the ornamental oreganos, which I think are always beautiful plants for hanging baskets. I have this in the pollinator garden. So you see these really kind of verdigris, purplish bracts. They start to get a little bit more pinkish purple, as you could see here. And it has a great smell to it, and it gets these beautiful pink flowers, and it kind of spills over the edge. So oftentimes when you're doing like, you know, a planter pot, they'll have something that sticks up, you have something that kind of spills over the container, and then you have something that kind of fills out the container. That's a nice foundation to work with, but at the end of the day, you kind of just plant what you want to plant and that is interesting to you. Something else that I thought was really nice and that I'd like to start planting a bit more in the landscape as well is this. Do you hear that? It's like, as well. When I want to emphasize my words, I'll like scream into this pot. This is Biglowii natalii. It is a type of solidago. It's a type of goldenrod, believe it or not. But look at its feathery leaves, its feathery fronds. So very unusual. I mean, we have ones around here, Euthamia graminifolia, which is a grass leaf solidago, which has thin leaves, but not this thin. And I thought this was a nice feathery mix that we can maybe put into a planter, maybe not this one, because I think this kind of dark green and this kind of bluish green, they may contrast a bit too much. The only one that I have in here that may not be a perennial is this geranium. So this is Geranium Great Lady Plymouth. So this is a pelargonium, and this is one that smells like kind of citrusy. A lot of times these pelargoniums have some type of smell, probably used to, you know, get not attract any insects. It's kind of a way to detract pests from eating the leaves. But we've done a great tour on our sister channel, Plant One On Me. It was quite a while ago, of an amazing pelargonium collection in the Netherlands. And we smelled pelargoniums that smelled like citrus and rose. That's typical. That's what you could usually find. But then they had like root beer and, you know, all smelly socks and all these different kinds of smells. So we went with one that smells really nice, actually. And this might be a nice pairing, because one of the things that I'd like to feature, even though it's a more cottage style house, there's a sense of elegance, subdued elegance, subtle elegance that comes with the house. And I think pelargoniums to me feel very elegant as well. There's something elegant about these pontechiums that are tall and lithe and spindly, which I think I like. So these two for me might actually work well in there. So I'm just gonna get started and stop blathering. And I'm just gonna use some potting mix in here. I don't think it has to be anything too special. You want something that is draining, well draining. So I brought some extra perlite if need be. So I may actually put that in here. But I've noticed from just having the pontechiums out, oh, there's an earthworm in here. Look at this. Look at Mr. Earthworm. I think he's gonna be happy if he goes into the garden. Into the garden, okay. I noticed about these pontechiums that they get a little wilty if they don't get water. So I might set these out a little bit far from the house, because I'd like them to get natural rainwater, and we have a pretty rainy season here. So let me just pull these out. These could give people a little bit of contact dermatitis if you're sensitive to kind of the fuzzy furs of plants like this. The earthworm might have come from this, because there's another earthworm that fell out. I'll keep him in there. So I'm gonna need to build up the soil, obviously, because I want this to come out. I don't want it to like sink in. And like I said, I might not get all of these planted today, because I think now I'm pretty set on getting a little liatris. Maybe like there's one called Floristan, Liatris spicata Floristan white, which has white flowers. Usually liatris has these nice purplish red flowers. Let's try this pelargonium. This gets really bushy, so I know this looks small, and we'll have to build this up. But something like that, kind of spilling over and bushing out. And I'm kind of feeling this ornamental or oregano. So I've gotten these plants, by the way. I should shout out some of these places, because I love shopping at some of these places. Rare Roots, which is down in Virginia. That's where I got a lot of the Coreopsis, the Biglowii. Bluestone Perennials, you're probably familiar with. They grow in these coconut pots, so you could plant them right in. You don't have to take the coconut pot away. And I got Select Seeds, so I get seeds from them. They usually do some really pretty cottage flowers and things like that, but they also grow out some plants. That's where I got my Verbena bonariensis, which doesn't look like much now, but it starts to put on leaves and flowers in the late summer and fall. And where else? Old Dairy Nursery, I think, is where I got the Echium. They have some really cool varieties there. So I'm thinking this which actually looks a little sparse, but these plants will start to get larger through the season. And I think this is why people plant annuals in pots, because you get the annuals and they all look like big and bushy. The begonias and the petunias, they're all in flower at that same time, and they have a long flowering season. I like the perennial. I like the perennial plantings in here. I think the pollinators tend to like the perennial plantings when they start to flower. And afterwards, I could still change them up. I just move these into the landscape somewhere, and then I replant them. Not a big deal. So I feel like I get more plants because I don't have to toss them all away. In this case, the pelargonium I'd have to take in because it is one of the few that are annuals. Even this Hylotelophilium, I think it used to be called Sedum sieboldii. I think it's called Hylotelophilium now. These are completely, you wouldn't think it, but they are hardy to our zone, 5-6 here. So what do you know? When I plant these, sometimes the pot is above the soil, so I just kind of pull this back a little bit like that. And then that way I can bury it a little better. And the great thing is like, as it starts to fill out, if there's some gaps, then you could go and like pop in another plant or two. Another option too is I had just planted a bunch of bulbs that are not hardy to our area. So they're kind of like bulbs that you plant in spring and they come up in the summer. That's another option. Like I could go back and take up some of those bulbs that I planted in another planter or in outdoors and kind of stick some in here and watch those come up during the summer months too. So that's another nice option. All right, so I'm gonna just water this in. I'm gonna water it in on the ground though, so I don't like create a waterfall on top of here. I'm gonna move that down. Now, I would like to plant that one up, but it's gonna be pretty much the same. And I think I'm gonna plant one of these up. I'm gonna save the liatris for that one. I'll also do a shout out for these beautiful pots. I don't know if it's facing you. Yeah, there you go. So I think this is a digitalis, a foxglove on the front. But this is by Witchford Pottery, and this is based out of the UK, family owned and run, I believe. And then they also do these really cute pot feet. So I thought these were extremely elegant. This was their Shakespeare version, so they have like a little Shakespeare what's in a name, that which we call by a rose by any other would just smell as sweet. And they're all like hand done, all of the artwork on the front. So I thought that was really beautiful. These are relatively pricey in the world of like plant pots, so I don't have that many of them, but it's a kind of a nice heirloom piece. And I feel like a lot of planter pots, both inside and out, to me, they feel like it's an heirloom, it's like a furniture piece, it's just an extension of the beauty of the house. So I wanted to be able to carry that through as well here. So I'm gonna only plant this one up, and I'll plant these other ones later and then just kind of refresh the area. All right, so let's fill this up. I have quite a bit of coreopsis. So I have this coreopsis, this one is the Auricula nana. This is the one that we planted in our native lawn. So this is a cultivated variety of a native species. This one is the Galliardia, so that's not coreopsis. Then we have this one here, which is grandiflora, and this one looks like Presto. So this is just 8 to 10 inches tall. So these get quite small. And I think that these would be interesting to possibly plant in here. The other one that I'd like to see as the tall one is this Retibita. And I'm not sure if this is politically correct, but the cultivar name is called Red Midget. But Red Midget is still quite tall, 15 to 30 inches is as tall as it gets, but our regular Retibita pinnata gets quite tall. But this is called also a Mexican hat, and it's because this conical disc part of it gets to be really tall, and then the petals kind of droop down below, and it kind of looks like a hat, you know, with the brim coming down. So I thought this could be a nice one, and maybe when I planted the coreopsis and things like that last year, the hoverflies really loved those plants and they hung out quite a bit, like on the porch. So I feel like that was hoverfly approved. I did bring gloves, but sometimes I just really like to have the soil or potting medium feel on your hands. Now these ones usually sit on the covered patio. So this is the type of planters that you wake up in the morning and you make sure that they have a good drought of water. Same thing with the echiums in the summer. If this is sitting outside and you're not getting a lot of rain, which we've been getting a pretty good dose of rain here, then you won't have to worry about watering your pots. But if this sits under a covered patio like this one is, then you're gonna have to water them. Even though these plants are a bit more, I would say, kind of the ones kind of growing in more of like field or meadow conditions, which don't need really good soil. They could have more depauperate soils. This is a nice mix right there. This is gonna be the foundational plant. This is gonna be the large plant. So where the echium was there, this will probably be the larger one, even though it kind of looks small. Then I like the idea of having a bigeloii. I love this feathery, but this is too much feathery next to one another. So I wanna have something else, like this geum. This geum's a really good one that could fill out. I'll give you the cultivar name. This is Tempo Yellow. So we have some like Tempo Rose and Tempo Peaches, I think, up in the pollinator garden. But you see how this is a bit more of a fuller look to it? So that could be nice too. And I'm just playing around with this. I mean, I don't quite know if this is the way that I want to go yet. I also like this coreopsis too, and this one looks like it's going to be super floriferous. I think this is a semi-double bloom, which I tend to not go with like double bloom. Semi-double is usually okay, but it usually means that there's no pollinator potential if there's a double bloom. And then because then there's no disc there. The disc is replaced with actually petals. So yeah, so that's something to consider if you're like looking to plant something for pollinators. Let's just see. I'm gonna step above and just see which one I like the look of best. Like that. I'm starting to like that. I think once I get my own greenhouse, I'll probably have an easier time starting from seed. So this bigeloii, it's something that you could have in like a rock garden or a dry garden. I just like how it's a different take to our solidago, because solidago or goldenrod is a very important plant to our pollinators, particularly even specialist pollinators. A lot of pollinators specialize in solidago, which is part of the Asteraceae family. Asteraceae is a very important family for pollinators as well. Okay, this is how it's kind of looking. Again, it all looks like it's on the same plane, but trust me, this is gonna grow really tall, and a lot of these are gonna billow out. Most of these are actually quite small, which is why I'm planting this in the background, even though it doesn't look like it's going to be tall. Yeah, okay, this is good. So one of the things that I should leave with, just because I'm not gonna plant all of these today, to be continued, is that this planter pot is next to that planter pot. And I usually don't plant all the same, but I wanna create still some synergies between the pots. So I'll probably use a different coreopsis in here. And because this reminds me of the liatris, I'll end up planting a liatris in here. I know I am. I'm kind of set on it now. So just so that there's some symphony between the planter pots. So I'm just going to water these in. I'm going to start putting them on the patio, and we'll plant the other ones up another time. See you later.
We'll be sharing how the gardens and wildscaped areas mature as the seasons progress, so if you enjoy videos like this, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notifications button to help us grow and share these videos to more folks. In the meantime, we'll be cracking away at more of the gardens and renovations here at Flock. We'll see you in the next video.